So as Peter said, I'm the Circular Economy Officer for the York and North Yorkshire LEP. So the LEP is, in case you don't know, we're a government organisation. There's one of us for each region in England, and we help form strategy, policy, and we offer practical support and advice as well to businesses across our local area in order to help sort of make our region as prosperous and as good for everyone who lives here as we can. So, as Peter mentioned, we do have our Circular Yorkshire campaign that's been running since 2019, and it aims to help engage every business in North Yorkshire in the circular economy, and help teach them about the various benefits of being a circular business, of becoming more sustainable, and crucially about how to do it. So we offer various links to funding organisations. We've just launched a brand new pilot support programme, which will be launching next week. And we offer a lot of resources and practical tips around how to become more circular. So we know that sort of supply chain problems are quite an issue in our area for manufacturers looking to become more circular. So I'm really excited to hear your talk, Geraldine. Very excited to introduce Geraldine from Irish Manufacturing Research to talk to us a bit about how to close the circular gap in manufacturing and supply chains. So I'm very happy to hand over to you now.
Thank you very much, Erin and Peter, for inviting me to be here today. Greetings from Dublin. I do need to just highlight one little health warning, is that I am working from home because of lockdown. So apologies in advance if there's noise from little people and the road next to me, but fingers crossed the universe will be kind to us today and not interrupt my presentation too much. So over the next kind of half an hour, I'm just going to give you an overview of what circular is, how it came about, how Ireland has embarked on its transition, and then kind of wrap up with a bit of a reflection on some practical steps that we see as helpful to industry that we're working with around how they can embark on this journey towards a circular business model. Before I jump into that, I just want to give you a little bit of a background about IMR, because we're quite an unusual entity in that we're a research performing organization, but we're not tied to a university. So we are what's referred to as a mid to late stage technology readiness level RPO, research performing organization. And we're supported by Ireland's Enterprise and Innovation Agency, Enterprise Ireland and IDA Ireland. We were established formally as a centre in 2014, so we're quite young. However, we have antecedents in industrial networks that were set up in 2008 that were focusing on advanced manufacturing, industrial energy efficiency. And our whole kind of raison d'etre is to position Ireland as a leader in advanced manufacturing. So all the work we do is all about applied industrial research, solving problems with industry. And our kind of mantra is that everything we do needs to demystify, de-risk, and deliver either an emerging technology that adds value to Irish industry or concepts like the circular economy. In terms of just bringing to life where we are on, in normal times, we have two offices, the Innovation Centre in Rathcoole, which is just outside Dublin, and then we have a large R&D and pilot line facilities in the Midlands of Ireland, where we have an additive lab, robotics and cobotics pilot lines, digitalization pilot lines, and the works. In terms of our impact, again, because we are not an academic research organization, everything we do is, I suppose, assessed around impacts to manufacturing professionals, to manufacturers with regards to their transition to factories of the future and embracing future technologies that will enhance their competitiveness, and ultimately about the transition towards sustainable manufacturers and their supply chains to enable Ireland's transition towards a low and or zero carbon economy. In terms of how we're organized, again, there's 4 key areas we work in: digitization, so how businesses can derive value from data; automation and control, so from AI to cobotics and robotics, and AR, VR, to design for manufacturing, which is our additive and subtractive manufacturing and customer-defined manufacturing offering, and then sustainable manufacturing, where I sit. So this is headed up by David McCormick, and everything we do here is around innovating across the energy, water, and materials nexus, and Circulaire is a key program within this thematic area. So in terms of just a reminder of some of the drivers and why we're seeing the circular economy emerge in Ireland, in the UK, Yorkshire, Europe, and further afield, effectively, there's a recognition that the impact of our consumption models are so great that we have to do business and essentially reconfigure our industrial systems in a new way. And that's because of the fact that biodiversity loss, water stress, 90% of it is attributable to our consumption and extraction of materials that form the basis for our products. It's estimated that over almost half of greenhouse gas emissions comes from material extraction and processing. And whenever I have these conversations with people who are going on this journey, we talk about the Industrial Revolution and the fact that effectively we didn't know then the negative impacts of our production processes. We do now. So there's an urgency for us now that we do understand to try and innovate in a way that can reduce this negative impact. Another key driver is the fact that business is embracing this agenda. They're embracing science-based targets. And science-based targets ultimately mean that there's a shift from just looking in their production site at scope 1 and scope 2 emissions to their value chains, to their relationships upstream and downstream. And that's where the circular economy, again, because it is a systemic concept, because it is about reconfiguring your business model, the products, and your relationships with customers and suppliers, it can support these objectives. Another key kind of trend is the fact that the connection between the circular economy and decarbonization, again, we understand now that whilst renewable energy will help us achieve and tackle 55% of the emissions associated with energy, there is 45% of emissions associated with products. And ultimately, again, up until now, those have largely been overlooked. So in terms of just framing this whole shift from a linear economy, and again, I know this is a CE Masterclass series, so I'm probably preaching to the converted, but where are we moving from? This take, make, use, waste economy where we extract, process, assemble, and ultimately use and then dispose of goods, into one where there are feedback loops in value chains which enable us to reuse and circulate resources, retaining their economic value and preserving the embedded emissions whilst fundamentally eliminating waste. Another key point just to make about my and Circulaire's framing of circular economy is that whilst it incorporates reduce, reuse, recycle, it's much, much more. It's an umbrella concept. It includes repair, remanufacturing, repurposing, upcycling, take-back schemes, reverse logistics, industrial symbiosis, chemical leasing, product service systems. So it is a plethora of strategies that allows you to keep materials, components, and products in use in the economy for as long as possible. Apologies if there's a little bit of background noise. Some of the activity behind me has just kicked off again. Hopefully you guys can't hear it. In terms of Ireland's circular economy transition and the so-called circular innovation gap, effectively, interestingly, manufacturing actually represents a significant proportion of Ireland's GDP. A lot of people, myself included, before returning to Ireland, kind of just saw Ireland as predominantly as an agri-food, agricultural-based economy. And obviously there's manufacturing associated to that, but it's interesting to realize that the European average with regards to manufacturing is around 14%. In terms of the percentage of contribution to the GDP, and Ireland is substantially above that. The Irish Environmental Protection Agency estimates that over 100 million tons of materials are used annually in the Irish economy. And they commission research around the area of the circular economy and resource efficiency back in 2013 that essentially developed scenarios that estimated that just a 5% material improvement could yield over €2 billion per annum for Ireland. And a follow-up study essentially argued that this hadn't really been capitalized on. And this kind of was part of what spurred IMR to start to explore appetites, along with feedback from our industry members around, what could the circular economy do? And also, what supports does industry need to get their heads around the circular economy and ultimately capitalize on this opportunity? Before I dive into the ins and outs of circular, I'll just briefly highlight where Ireland is, building on that kind of figure of 100 million tons of materials every year. The European average with regards to circular material use is 11.7%. Ireland is pretty much somewhat of a laggard. I hate to say it, but it is true when you look at the stats, compared to leaders like the Netherlands with a 29.9%, France, Belgium, even the United Kingdom and others. There is a lot of work to do. I think what's exciting is the fact that the government of Ireland has recognized, driven by the prominence of circular economy at the European Union level with regards to the EU Green Deal, the Circular Economy Action Plan, that the circular economy is key to Ireland's competitiveness. And here is an overview of some of the key documents that kind of highlighted the shift from a government perspective towards embracing this new economic model. The first one on the left was around the relationship between the bioeconomy. As I said, agri-food, the agricultural sector is a huge contributor to greenhouse gas emissions, about 33%, and also a huge contributor to GDP. But there was a recognition that while Ireland has tapped into a lot of the bioeconomy opportunities, there were and there are broader circular bioeconomy opportunities as well as non-bio-based circular opportunities in the country. Building on this, there was a key position paper around the future of jobs and competitive advantage in the country. And one of the key pillars in that highlighted the fact that the transition to a low carbon economy was pivotal to securing Ireland's competitiveness. And the circular economy again was highlighted here alongside the bioeconomy as a key aspect to contribute to this. In terms of, I guess, policy documents, this is where, again, there was a significant shift in 2019, around the time that IMR was having conversations with the now strategic partners to set up Circular, which culminated in Ireland publishing its Climate Action Plan, which highlighted the circular economy as a key climate mitigation strategy. And then last year, the publication of a waste action plan for a circular economy, which effectively acknowledged the fact that whilst thinking just about waste is a very key, waste management and resource use is a key part of the circular economy, there's actually a need for more than just a focus on circular economy strategies in the context of waste management. And in the Waste Action Plan for a Circular Economy, the government committed to setting up a cross-governmental circular economy unit within the Department for Environment, Climate and Communications. That is now active. And we are waiting a circular economy strategy, a high-level all-of-government strategy, which is going to be followed up with sectoral plans for the transition, and then also will inform a circular economy bill, which means that it will have statutory footing, meaning that regardless of the change potentially in the future of the hue of the government, circular economy will fundamentally be part of the development agenda and the way forward for the country. Again, just highlighting some of the, thinking about in the context of, the fact that Ireland's material reuse rate is only 1.6%. Ireland, nonetheless, in light of this course correction over the last number of years and this significant embracing of the circular economy, has been featured as a case study in the OECD policy dialogues around scaling the circular economy. And now just switching tack a little bit away from some of the policy, just to highlight areas of the economy that have been highlighted again by studies where there are significant circular economy opportunities. So ranging from food and beverages to pharmaceuticals, chemicals and non-metallic mineral products, construction, retail, accommodation, and food services. So the size of the pie is significant, and we have enough understanding of where those opportunities are. The question is, how do we go about supporting businesses to tap into these economies? And that's fundamentally when Circular comes in. Again, I won't stop too long because I'm likely to be speaking to some of the converted, but just to reiterate that again, the benefits of the circular economy are manifold. You go from macroeconomic with regards to the economic growth and resource cost savings that are motivating the government of Ireland to embrace this economic model, the significant job creation and job retention opportunities, the innovation opportunities, all the way down to, for businesses, ultimately it's about resilience to resource price volatility and supply chain shocks, the new revenue models, the value creation opportunities, the new customer relationships and enhanced customer loyalty. And then when it comes to environmental and social benefits, again, I've said it already, decarbonization, carbon emissions reductions, contributing to multiple sustainable development goals, in addition to SDG 12, which is the resource and consumption and production SDGs. There are some really great studies which highlight the fact that the circular economy can touch and deliver on a range of the sustainable development goals. And again, sometimes undersold is the social benefits of the circular economy. When you create secondary raw material markets, and you create an opportunity for more localized and regional supply chains. And this has a significant job creation and job retention potential and can provide quality work at all skill levels. And then from a consumer perspective, there's obviously the financial savings and the empowerment from effectively the right to repair movement and the ability to actually potentially keep goods in use yourself as opposed to replacement. So now shifting into, with a little bit of that background of kind of Irish context and some of the wider drivers, what I'm going to do now is introduce the program that I am responsible for. So Circulera, meaning literally circular Ireland, era being the Irish word for Ireland, is a cross-sectoral manufacturing network. It is the first industry-led innovation network for the circular economy in Ireland. As I said, it was set up, and the secretariat is Irish Manufacturing Research, but we co-designed the program with our strategic partners, the Department of the Environment, Climate and Communications, DEC, Ireland's DEC, the Environmental Protection Agency, and an organization which you may or may not be familiar with, but again, a very interesting European actor called EIT Climate Kick. Climate Kick is one of the largest public-private partnerships for climate innovation, and effectively they are bringing to bear in the Irish context a number of pathfinders that they have done around circular economy and sustainable production systems. So again, we are intentionally set up not only with industry members. We started with 25 founding members and we're growing. We intentionally are engaging with a key government department responsible for the Climate Action Plan, which has the remit for the Circular Economy Unit, and we have the Environmental Protection Agency again. So an interesting, I suppose, group of actors that are all really important with regards to unlocking the barriers to scaling circular economy in Ireland. The other thing I'll say is that our membership base, which you can see, ranges from the built environment to the food and drinks to packaging, automotive, med tech, pharmaceuticals, what we call as second life enablers. So those actors that extend producer responsibility schemes, actors that provide reverse logistics, ICT asset management companies, recyclers, Effectively, what we have is, and what we're trying to constellate is actors from all parts of the supply chain who ultimately recognize that this transition is a way of future-proofing their business. So our platform is open to any industry members in the Irish economy. But effectively what we're doing is, given the significance of the manufacturing sector to GDP, we're role modeling and providing a test bed in the manufacturing sector with a view that the lessons learned could be ultimately applied to all sectors of the economy. So in terms of our vision, it's an industry-led €4.5 million public-private partnership, and its vision is great. It is about accelerating the transition in Ireland, and it's about the transition in the Irish economy. It's a 3-year program. Like IMR's raison d'etre, it's about demystifying, de-risking, and delivering circular economy concepts through effectively stimulating systems-based innovation and test beds. What makes this really different is we're seeking to address the circularity or circular innovation gap in Ireland. What I highlighted, the fact that for a good number of years, there was knowledge that there's this €2 billion opportunity, but ultimately there effectively wasn't enough circular economy capacity, knowledge, and then fundamentally implementation. And there was a need for a broker or multiple brokers to help stimulate and get industry collaborating and on this journey. And effectively, that's where Circulaire came from. Again, what makes us different is the fact that it's industry-led, industry-driven, but we do engage, as I said, by virtue of who our strategic partners are, with policymakers. We also have a way of engaging with third sector, academia, and civil society, which I will touch on in a moment. And then with regards to innovation and test beds, ultimately, what makes us unique is that we also have a ring-fence innovation fund for the network. In terms of our objectives, it's about targeting a greater than 20% reduction in CO2 and greater than 20% reduction in waste across our network through the full gambit of circular economy strategies. It's about raising awareness and increasing understanding of circularity in Ireland. It's about highlighting what are the key barriers and different aspects of implementing circular economy and finding ways to overcome those barriers. We develop frameworks, toolkits, and innovation demonstrators to de-risk and prove the value of the circular economy. And I'll give you a flavor of some of those in a minute. And then there's this piece around, again, because we are partnering with the Department of Environment, Climate and Communications, the fact that this has risen to prominence in the Government of Ireland's agenda is about informing Ireland's policy innovation in the space. And I suppose capitalizing or increasing Ireland's relevance internationally and their ambition to, I suppose, capitalize on our enterprise and innovation strengths, specifically in the context of the circular economy and the bioeconomy. So how are we doing this? Effectively, we see our supporting of industry to capitalize on circular advantage through 5 key areas: awareness raising activities, knowledge sharing, capacity building, through tangible demonstrators in the Irish context to bring this to life, through supporting new young businesses, and then ultimately through ecosystem collaboration. In terms of some of that awareness raising, as part of the program, we've developed the first open access knowledge repository in Ireland dedicated to the circular economy. It obviously isn't just focused on Ireland in light of the fact that the circular economy is being driven from the EU and there's best practice all over the world. But effectively, it's one place that people can come to effectively start their learning journey around what is the circular economy. And ultimately, we've curated over 200 artifacts, as I said, ranging from case studies. What you see there is actually the outputs of some of our thematic working groups. We recently published our first thematic working group output from last year on the circular bioeconomy, ultimately providing insights into the opportunities. And it's the first of its kind. There's been studies on the bioeconomy. There are some preliminary studies on the circular economy, but nothing yet putting it together. Again, this was driven by a group of experts from the wider Irish innovation ecosystem. in collaboration. And that's very much, again, how IMR and Circulaire is, I suppose, trying to raise awareness and engage wider aspects of the Irish economy and societies. Ultimately, we collaborate as we go on this journey, even in implementing Circulaire as a program. In terms of knowledge sharing, I've already highlighted the circular bioeconomy, which is one of our 3 thematic working groups in 2020, another focus on industrial symbiosis and circular procurement. Those outputs, again, are publicly available. They will be released very shortly. We're just about to kick off our new thematic working groups. These topics are selected by our industry network based on their priorities, areas that they want to learn more about. And we're focusing this year on circular design, circular packaging, and circular plastics. In terms of just to bring this to life, this is kind of a highlight of the range of different types of organizations that we engage with, everything from the Department of Agriculture, Food and Marine to key universities in Ireland, consultants, and third sector organizations like Community Resource Network Ireland and Rediscovery Centre, which is another key actor that has been driving the transition towards a circular economy in Ireland. Just a quick plug, if we're also, as I said, collaboration is what we do. We're looking for expert facilitators to co-lead our upcoming thematic working groups. So again, an opportunity there potentially. In terms of the capacity building and what we've done here is we've developed a circular economy framework specifically for manufacturing. And what you're looking at is an overview from a product lifecycle perspective, which explores the circularity of materials, components, and products at key business touch points. And as well, as we take our members through this framework, ultimately what we're highlighting, not in addition to, understanding where the flows are and where waste is occurring in the system, we're also highlighting where there are enablers and what strategies and best practice exists out there. So this framework is something that we're transforming into an interactive infographic to help bring to life the possibilities at each stage of a product life cycle. Again, with regards to capacity building, we've developed a circular maturity assessment online toolkit, which allows our members to essentially reflect on where they are as an organization with regards to their circular maturity, ranging from strategy to culture to collaboration and ultimately innovation, and then when rubber hits the road to circular implementation. We also do training around key circular economy frameworks. This is one of the leading experts, Fenna Blomsma is one of the leading experts in circular economy in Europe, and we collaborated with her to run training on her toolkit circularity thinking with our members to help them get to grips with the potential of the circular economy. And then coming to demonstrators and the new ventures, we, as I said, have a dedicated innovation fund. It's not a huge fund, but the idea is that effectively it's something that can highlight and give our members an opportunity to ultimately test circular economy strategies and de-risk this transition for them. In 2020, we had 2 projects awarded with one of our lead partners, UoY Ireland, which is an extended producer responsibility scheme. The first one was around effectively developing a skill set for a circular economy for the white goods sector, working with the White Goods Trade Association, because there was a recognition that whilst there is a desire to repair and refurbish goods, there was a lack of capacity and skills within repair engineers to actually deliver this as a service for key brands. The second project also from UoY Ireland, the Extended Producer Responsibility Scheme, was around establishing a long life lithium battery center of excellence. So understanding the potential for battery reuse as we see the drive towards more electrification and the potential of the batteries that will be on the Irish markets. We have these calls annually, and effectively we currently have an open call for the network, which closes in a couple of weeks' time. Then with regards to new ventures, I won't stop too long here because I'm mindful of time, but effectively we have 5 new ventures that have come into the network. These are late stage organizations ranging from Ashley Environmental, who developed a microwave technology to essentially tap into the underused feedstocks from anaerobic digestion. Avoca Seafood, who are working in the industrial symbiosis space in the context of salmon farming. DAX, who are a company who developed a battery array management system to extend the life of batteries. IANAV, I am not a virgin, actually apparel and footwear manufacturing startup, which is looking to essentially develop a new product around 3D printed shoes. And then the ZeroNet, which is a reverse logistics technology, which actually, funny enough, has been piloted in Brighton in the UK markets with the Brighton County Council, but effectively it enables brands and county councils to get products from the doorstep back into a repair, refurbishment, or harvesting for recycling situation. So very lastly, before I start to wrap up, the area around collaboration, circular, and you may or may not be aware that there is a circular economy hotspot network in Europe. And effectively, what this is a network of entities that are seeking to, at a national level in their respective countries, accelerate the circular economy transition. And prior to circular being established, there was no such hotspot in Ireland. So we have signed a memorandum of understanding with the Holland Circular Hotspots, who essentially who are the secretariat of this network. And what this enables us to do is learn from the experiences of industry and policymakers from across Europe. So ultimately, I think most people will agree that the circular economy is complex, and that the more we can learn and share knowledge, not only between businesses, but between networks, the faster we can seek to accelerate this transition over the next decade. Again, another area in terms of the collaboration that we do, another key area of our work is as part of the ISO standards committee. These standards for the circular economy are being developed over the next 2 years. And again, what that enables us to do is effectively help our industry members to understand what's coming down the road with regards to standardization in the context of this space. So apologies if that was a bit of a whistle-stop tour. I'm going to just kind of wrap up by reflecting on some of the challenges that we've seen that Irish industry and have with regards to scaling circularity. So with regards to, at a material level, creating secondary raw material markets and essentially creating more localized supply chains, one of the things that is a key barrier here is around the purity of those materials, and also understanding, the level of purity and having those materials at a significant volume to make it economically feasible, ultimately to switch from a virgin material to a percentage or proportion of your materials being derived from secondary raw materials. Connected to these, secondary raw material markets, ultimately you need the infrastructure, be it digital and physical, to help aggregate when it comes to things like waste byproducts, to enable the likes of industrial symbiosis. And then data. Again, with regards to the purity of the materials, and you need the data to understand effectively that purity. And ultimately, when it comes to components and products, knowing what is contained in those, knowing effectively the life that that product or component has had, ultimately enables companies to potentially reuse those effectively assets as opposed to ultimately just harvesting them. So there's a big drive towards piloting digital product passports, digital material passports. And then there's a key area around standardization and policy at a national level. So again, particularly when it comes to the likes of trying to scale industrial symbiosis, there's a need for greater kind of standardization and learning from other countries around end of waste and byproduct decisions. In terms of some practical steps that we see as kind of key for our industry partners to engage on this journey, one of the key things that we do with our members is we create a baseline, we measure the current impact, and we also take stock of what they're already doing with regards to circularity. And then a key step is around helping them understand where their capacity building, their understanding and their knowledge of circular economy is, and where the organization is at with regards to how aligned this transition is to their current corporate strategy. Another key step then is around, in addition to not only measuring the impact, is visualizing how these resources are being used in their production lines, in their value chains, and ultimately helping them to identify where structural waste is occurring. And then that lends itself towards exploring circular-oriented innovation opportunities. And ultimately, through our innovation fund and through their own self-funded activities, the support we provide is around piloting and testing these circular economy strategies. Connected to that is ultimately formalizing their approach to the circular economy implementation through developing a circular economy strategy and action plan with clear KPIs so they can measure their progress and the value and the cost savings, the environmental benefits that the circular economy is delivering to their business. And lastly, collaboration is key. We can't stress, I know Circular by itself is a collaboration effort, but ultimately what we find is there's so much benefit from not trying to figure this all out by yourself, in the sense of being with IMR as a critical friend, but also actually the learning from the network members themselves around some of the shared challenges and how perhaps others have overcome them. So very lastly, I guess my last 2 cents is that the circular and zero carbon agendas are fundamentally mutually reinforcing, and circularity is non-negotiable with regards to achieving Ireland's decarbonisation goals. And circular is ultimately trying to unlock the value of the circular economy opportunity in the Irish economy. And then lastly, ultimately, again, going back to that point about collaboration, successfully redesigning products, business models, production systems, and supply chains, it demands cross-sectoral collaboration. And now I will hand back to Erin. Thank you very much.
Apologies there, it wasn't letting me unmute, but thank you, Geraldine, for an absolutely fascinating presentation. It was really, really interesting to see some of the work you've been doing, and I think some things that really resonated with me was your philosophy of sort of demystify, de-risk, and deliver. It is something that's quite cutting edge at the moment, and it can be really scary for businesses to sort of take the plunge, because it can be, quite difficult to see whether anyone else has already done it. And I think being able to have that as the steering for the agenda is really, really important. So we have got some questions coming in, but I think my sort of first question would be, would you say being industry-led has been a major factor in terms of the sort of success of circular?
And obviously, we're still, in the early days of the program. So we are, kind of 15 months into a 3-year program. In terms of the success of it, I think the circular economy needs to have, ultimately it's industry who are the ones who are going to, I suppose, are the ones, as you say, are grappling with the decisions that they need to take in order to transform their business model. So if they are not front and center, then how is this going to work, in the sense, I guess I suppose what I'm trying to get at is, I think industry, the circular economy transition is ultimately about all sectors of the economy, all parts of society. But if industry is not brought in as the engine, of production, then how can we, everything else I think we're doing will not fundamentally be transforming the economy. So for me, the industry engagement and it being industry directed is the way to get implementation, meaning that the way we work is ultimately by, pulsing our network and saying, where do you want us to focus? Because, you're the ones, it's your business. You're the ones at the coalface. You're the ones dealing with COVID and the impact on your supply chains. You are the ones that we are trying to pull up alongside and support on this journey. If we don't listen to what you need, then this is going to fall off the agenda, in the sense of, from the priorities. If you think about the complexities of life, it's just something that I think fundamentally, ultimately the success of the transition, for me, you obviously need government buy-in and the policy signals that enable industry to respond, to future-proof themselves and to ultimately comply with what's coming down the line. But I think, industry as the economic engine of the economy is, helping them and pulling alongside them to solve their problems is the way that we're gonna scale this in the time frame that we have.
I think that's exactly the right approach to take, because it makes it also something. I think collaboration is such an important part of the circular economy, and it makes it something that's collaborative rather than something that we end up imposing what we think is best rather than what will work.
And the other pieces, I think, and why, again, the industry-led piece is important, is because circular economy is an innovation opportunity. So again, it's when it's seen that way, it's a new economic model that fundamentally asks you to rethink how you create value. What is the nature of your relationship with your customers? What is the nature of the relationship with your suppliers? It creates, and we find that with members saying, wow, I kind of was thinking about all these strategies, but then when I went through your circular maturity assessment process, I was fundamentally rethinking my business. It really kind of, some of these aha moments going, hang on, I could be a different company in 5 years' time.
Absolutely. Like, I think that's one thing that's really interesting, is the sort of transformative aspect of the circular economy. I believe Peter is about to send around, on this very note, another circular economy poll, and it's just about sort of where you are in your circular economy journey. So if our attendees would like to answer that, then I'm sure we'll get some very interesting statistics from that. And we've also had a few questions in, so that's really great. Thank you. Do continue to send them through. We've got about 10 or 15 minutes. We've got Geraldine until 5, so we'll try and get through as many as possible. So I think one of the really interesting ones here is, how are we measuring the success of the circular economy? Because things like GVA productivity aren't necessarily compatible with the circular economy. So how would you personally measure it?
So that's that's kind of really going for the heart of the challenge with regards to the circular economy. And I'll put my hands up. We haven't solved it yet. I know of some really good indicators that I suppose give you insight at different levels. For example, the World Business Council for Sustainable Development has circular transition indicators, which focuses on the organizational level. So things like, for example, how much recycled material content are you using in your products? What are the percentage of different kind of, what percentage of your packaging is reusable, or what percentage of your products, depending on the nature of your products, could be repaired or manufactured or designed. So there's a number of different, like, organizational oriented metrics. I think when it comes to measuring circular economy and circular performance, it's a bit of a minefield, because you're trying to essentially understand if you think about L's life cycle assessment and the impacts associated with products, those have their own ambiguities and data gaps, never mind when you start introducing secondary raw materials. So I guess I'm not trying to dodge the question, but I do know that the ISO standards on the circular economy has a working group that spent the last 18 months looking at metrics and performance, and that is a bunch of about 100 of the experts in the space who are still kind of going, how do we make sure that this is logical and operationalizable when you have so many different ways of measuring not only organizational performance, but supply chain performance, product performance, et cetera, et cetera. So it really is an area that is being tackled. And I guess my hope is that that whole ISO process will help put some structure on it to make it more accessible for industry, because ultimately those ISO standards are meant to be for practitioners and for industry. So I guess what I can say is that I am aware that there are a lot of very, very smart people from across the world trying to crack this nut, as well, of course, you know, PhDs and researchers and academic institutions who are also looking at this. But I'm afraid I don't have the answer today.
I think it's related very similarly to what you were saying about business owners having to rethink how they do business. We're having to rethink about how the whole business system works. And I think something that's the results of the poll have just come back, and for a lot of for a lot of people attending this today, they're interested in the circular economy, but not quite sure where to start. So I think you said you had some really great resources on offer, and I will also just share the link for all the attendees of our York and North Yorkshire Growth Hub. So they're the business-facing part of the lab, and they offer the practical support that we help strategize. And we have a range of guides there to help businesses get off the ground with sustainability. But do you have any particular resources you'd recommend, Geraldine?
Yeah, so I think, again, there, as I said, the circular economy knowledge library that we've set up is kind of like that place to go and I suppose search for your sector and see what case studies exist and look at some of the sectoral reports which highlight and synthesize some of the best practice for different sectors. I think, again, that whole not sure where to start, I can't underemphasize the importance of, I guess, taking stock within your organization. So ultimately looking, you know, if you're a manufacturer at your production line and kind of going, you know, what do we do? What is the impact from a materials, water and energy perspective? You know, what are the flows in our business? And again, you can do that in a very detailed way, or you can do it in a more kind of high level indicative way to start to get to grips with this idea of, well, where is there waste in my system? What am I doing? You know, what circular strategies am I already implementing? And where is there alignment for me to tag on another circular strategy because I'm already doing something? So I think, you know, and, you know, you recommending your guides and that it's, the circular economy is as much about life cycle assessments and in-depth kind of measuring of impact as it is about taking a step back and looking at your business and your strategy and your business model and saying, what do I do? What do I make? Who do I make it with? And why do I do it that way? So there is an element of a reflection on, yes, I've been doing this for this reason for so long, but if resource price volatility, if supply chain shocks, if I want to actually try and perhaps, you know, support more local or regional supply chains, what could I do? So there's a, excuse me, there's a piece around reflection, and then finding tools and frameworks to help you go on that journey.
I think absolutely, yeah. And it's what you were saying about supply chain shocks, I think will resonate with a lot of businesses at this point last year, especially, where we were starting to see a lot of the impacts of COVID on the supply chains, and it sort of drew to people's attention how easily a supply chain shock can happen. And on that note, we have got a really good question from Chris, who says, do you see the circular economy as a route to resilience, and how? We certainly do, but it'd be great to get sort of your view on it as well.
Absolutely. And I think this is where the circular economy, from a, you know, again, that supply chain aspect, that idea that, so we have another, it's actually an IMR project in the agri-food sector, which is not connected to circular, but it's about industrial symbiosis. And it's an example of a food manufacturer who produces bread, who is giving the bread to a brewery to make beer. And the idea is that why this is of value, and this is a model that is actually kind of around Europe. You know, you've got Toastale, you've got Adnams, you've got a lot of UK breweries, Brewdog, US breweries, Belgian breweries who've done this. But in Ireland, this idea, even though it was percolating, there was no, it hadn't been done yet. And when we were talking to the microbrewery to set this, to develop this, grant proposal to then go seek funding to do this demonstrator, I said to him, why haven't you done it? If you know that you can effectively reduce the need and your bill with regards to the malted barley for your beer, why haven't you done it? Because it will increase your resilience if you can roll this out across your whole portfolio of beers. And he was saying, well, the issue I have is, as a small entity, I don't have the bandwidth to do the piloting. So what we found is, so I realize I've gone on a little bit of a tangent. Effectively, yes, circular economy is fundamentally about resilience and that supply chain piece, because effectively, if you can get either secondary raw materials to substitute for the amount of virgin materials on your input bill, on your supplier bill, that means that you are not as I suppose, what's the right word? You're effectively not hit as hard when something happens in your supply chain, to put it really kind of simply. But again, I think there's an element of companies and, that whole, where do we start? Going back to that previous question, I think sometimes companies need to see other businesses like them doing it, and like them in the sense of, and part of this particular project, we're doing work in the region to say, hey, have you guys thought about industrial symbiosis? And all of a sudden, because there's a regional actor who's done it, who's walked the path over a year to figure this out with another company, other regional players are going, oh, maybe I should have a look at this too. So there's that element of from a, how do we start? Sometimes it helps to have other companies that you know of, or other, entrepreneurs and industry leaders that you go, hang on, they've walked this path. So maybe I can talk to them informally and say, hey, how did you do this? Why did you do it? Yeah.
I think it's seeing other businesses as not just competitors, but potential collaborators.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that's another thing from a resilience perspective, where the circular economy, you can effectively do things in non-competitive areas. So for example, packaging. I know of an example of essentially a company that uses polyethylene, and effectively what they're looking at is how could they collaborate with other manufacturers and other sectors to essentially aggregate enough used polyethylene to replace virgin polyethylene. That's a non-competitive issue. It's got nothing to do with their core product. It's not something that they need to be worried about, because it's just the packaging to make sure that their product gets to their customer and the end user protected. So there's lots of things you can start on in that non-competitive space, I think, where you can share and learn from each other. And again, in the context of manufacturing, we see again and again companies learning from other companies just by even going, again, pre-COVID, doing site tours of, a pharmaceutical company going to a furniture manufacturer and going, that process or that piece of equipment, we have that too. Oh, you do this. I could. And, again, even just having that exposure to companies that are not in your sector, I think, again, that's where the opportunity sometimes can arise, and you can find interesting collaborators.
I think so. I think something I'd add on the sort of resilience side of things is, for me, the circular economy is a great way for businesses to future-proof themselves. We know that there are going to be things like carbon costs in the future. We know that businesses are soon going to be asked to showcase their sustainability credentials, and being ahead of the curve is a great place to be.
So in Ireland, the government is set to increase the carbon price from 26 euro a tonne to 100 euro a tonne between now and 2030. So again, there's a huge incentive, as you said, from a future proofing perspective. And also, again, with regards to wanting to sell goods to the EU, the European Union, with regards to its directives around eco-design, sustainable product policy frameworks, there are repairability indexes. There's all sorts of policy instruments that are coming down the line over the next decade that, again, businesses that don't embrace this will find it difficult to compete, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Get that competitive edge over the other businesses if you can't collaborate with them, get the edge. So I'm going to ask one last question. We've got 2 questions to answer, so I'm going to try and roll them both into one because they're both about sort of sectors. And it's about whether Circulara has actually done any work with sort of the construction industry or any service sector activities that have helped support the circular economy. What kind of, obviously you're very manufacturing based, but there's a lot of manufacture within the construction industry, and obviously the service sector can provide a lot of sort of support with that as well. So I know it's a little bit of a tricky question to answer.
So in terms of the built environment, and construction, so we have actors in the built environment and that are part of the network. I think construction demolition waste is a huge area with regards to opportunities for the circular economy. In terms of pilot demonstrations, we have some that we're cooking that are not yet kind of out there yet, but I guess what I can say is that absolutely services and this whole idea of product service systems and servitization, there's definitely a role for, I guess, brokers who understand the needs of effectively what the end user wants from a building or from a product, and can play a role in facilitating that shift from ownership of products to oh dear, something came up on the screen with the prompt in a very not good way. We'll deal with that afterwards, but just acknowledging, thank you for flagging. So back to the construction sector. Effectively, there are huge opportunities around effectively, buildings as material banks. Really good work being done in the Netherlands, through Horizon 2020, and this whole idea of product passports, material passports, again, are things we are exploring, but we haven't got any pilots off the ground as of yet. So I suppose it's a case of just watch that space, but definitely huge opportunities. And Pete's just come back to say that he will edit out that blip before any of this is published.
I think that's best. Well, I mean, I would just like to say again, a huge thank you for coming along. It's been a really informed presentation. I know I've learned a lot, and I'm in the circular economy, so I'm sure our attendees will find it really useful as well. So I will sort of wrap up the session there. We'll be closing it at 5 past. But yeah, if anyone does want to get in contact, York and North Yorkshire Lab's always very keen to hear from businesses who are looking to become more circular. We've got a lot of help and support for businesses looking to engage in the circular economy, and I'm sure Geraldine will be happy to answer any questions as well.
Absolutely. Thank you again, Erin and Peter, for the invitation to be here today.
No problem.